So I asked you to list the 3 domains. Fairly simple question for a Monday, right? Maybe. Bacteria, archaebacteria, and eukarya. Perfect. Right off the bat. Yep. I did hit record. Let me check. Yes, I'm recording. So today, our super short notes, but I'm going to have you make a little flow map to put your different domains in your head together. Might give you a little Venn diagram. So sequencing of rRNA suggests that all organisms evolve along 3 distinct lineages. Now, I know we haven't talked about rRNA, but what is rRNA? It's the forgotten step RNA, I always say, the one everybody forgets about because we don't talk about it a lot. The Cinderella of RNA. What is rRNA? See what you guys are giving me. Ribosomal RNA, for sure. Stuff that makes up ribosomes, right? So ribosomes are made of 2 basic parts, RNA and proteins. Okay? And the RNA that makes up the ribosomes is called ribosomal or rRNA. Now, looking at those different domains, whereas prokaryotic unicellular organisms that reproduce asexually refer to the domain bacteria. So if I say asexually, it means obviously not combining 2 different sets of genetic information. This is how bacteria reproduce. What is the process called of them reproducing asexually? Let's see if you remember. This is one you should know. What happened? What is the process that bacteria use to reproduce asexually? Binary fission, perfect. So we actually call it binary fission, which is basically a form of mitosis, but not really, because mitosis is nuclear division. So binary fission is kind of a beast in its own for bacterial purposes of reproducing. Now we have budding. No, budding is a type of asexual reproduction, but budding is sort of like how Hydra reproduce, which is a eukaryote. It's a protist, right? Yeah. There are hydras. They're in pond water. Oh, you just no. Binary fission. Oh. Nuclear fission. Yeah. It's kind of how helium splits in 2 to make hydrogen, right? Except it's not identical. Oh, that's off of Adventures, yeah. Okay. That was a good movie. I like that one. Yep. Okay. Oh, the winter. Yeah. Okay. So cyanobacteria are large photosynthetic prokaryotes, and they fall under the domain bacteria. Most bacteria are heterotrophic, meaning they eat other things, right? Now, cyanobacteria are a bacteria in their own right, in their own separated category. Almost a lot of people would argue they deserve their own domain because they make their own energy, but they still fall under the domain bacteria because of their cell structure. Now, they are important in ecosystems. They keep chemical cycling throughout. And when I say chemical cycling, of course, I'm referring to the phosphorus cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the carbon and oxygen cycle, and that water cycle. Everything's part of the water cycle. But without bacteria, we would not be able to return our nitrogen back to the atmosphere, we would not be able to return the phosphates into our, or bring the phosphates into our plant life so we can eat it. And those are pretty important. Let me just see if you know why, because this is one of those illustrative things. Why is nitrogen and phosphorus so important? And I would expect two different answers here. Why is nitrogen important? Why is phosphorus important? So you think about the cycles, the nitrogen and phosphorus cycle. Why are those two so important? Because I will tell you, without bacteria, they do not get into us. And why are they so important to us? And don't tell me simply because we wouldn't be here without them. Tell me why. What macromolecule does each significantly contribute to? How about that? That's where your mind should have jumped. See what we're getting so far. That's a tough one. Ding, 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 ding. I like that one. So nitrogen is, of course, needed to make our nitrogen bases, right? That's what nucleotides. And so those are extremely important for the nucleic acid world, both DNA and RNA. Also, don't forget about adenosine triphosphate, ATP, right? So we don't have energy without phosphorus either, without those three phosphate groups. Okay? So super important stuff. And then, of course, the amino group in our amino acid is NH2. Very good. So it's magic, yes. Science is magic, right? Right. It's true. Yeah. Well, it's really everything's science. You can say like art science. It's just like pigments, proteins mixed with a little bit of lipids. You smear it on like a dead animal skin. You got like a portrait. Right? It's epithelial tissue. It's amino. It's everything. It's lipids. It's all together. So some bacteria are parasitic and cause disease. We know that. When we talk about bacteria and the domain bacteria, these are the things that get us sick, right? Okay? So just keep in mind, you guys, without bacteria, nothing is on this planet. Our ancestors are bacteria. Now, the domain archaea is the other domain, and you go, why do I need two domains for bacteria? Well, they're so very different. That's why. Now, the prokaryotic unicellular organisms that reproduce asexually still, so they're still using binary fission. They live in extreme environments. Here's the difference. Okay? Do you guys remember in biology talking about extremophiles, like thermophiles, methanogens? We mentioned them. Like these are our early ancestors. What I mean by that, the early forms of life that would have first existed at like the geothermal vents in the ocean. They're called extremophiles because they live in like pH 2. They live in extremely acidic and caustic gases like methanogen environments. So the cell wall is diverse, but not the same as the bacterial cell wall because they live in those extreme environments. There we go. And then, of course, there's the domain eukarya. Sorry. This is our domain. We share it with a lot of other things. Now, there are both unicellular and multicellular organisms here. This is often the misconception, and this is where a lot of students miss test questions on the AP exam, believe it or not. They automatically assume that eukaryotes are multicellular. That is not true. Okay? Let me define and break down the word eukaryote first for you. Okay? So this first part means with. EU. Karyo means what? A nucleus. Okay? So this word literally means with a oops, I hit the erase button. Nucleus. Gosh, it looks like a kindergartner wrote that. This is pad. I'm going to blame it on the pad. I have perfect handwriting normally. Okay. No. So anything that has a nucleus falls into this category, which means any pond water protista, which means any multicellular organism. There is a lot in eukarya, right? So unicellular and multicellular organisms alike exist here. Cells with a membrane-bound nucleus. That is the dead giveaway. If you see a nucleus, you go, I am in the domain eukarya for sure. They use sexual reproduction, but it is not required. You guys mentioned things like budding, right? Okay. Fragmentation, like when you break a starfish apart and you just cut up into a bunch of pieces and throw it in the ocean, you make a bunch of other starfish, right? Isn't that creepy? I would do that if I could. I would break like 2 of my arms off and leave them at home and go fishing all day. I'd leave one here, and I'd leave one at home and do all the chores. I'd go fishing all day, and then I'd come home and I'd put those 2 people in a closet, and then I'd just live. I would be the guy that would clone somebody if I could. What? Yeah. I would remove that gene. There's a fishing gene. Yep. You could clone me tomorrow. It's no big deal. You'd have to wait for me to, be impregnated and go through my gestation cycle, and then, of course, it'd be a 9-month-year-old. I'd have to actually grow up into a person, but, yeah, they've been cloning animals since the 70s. They started with frogs. It's no big deal. So, for those of you who have not had biotechnology, you guys, what they do is this. I could take your epithelial cells, Sam. I just take your cell, and I'd remove the nucleus. And it would have the full instructions for you, right? Okay? And then I would take, let's just go out and find a random female, because that would be weird otherwise. Okay, a random female, okay, and we take her egg, and then we would remove her nucleus from her egg, and we would take the nucleus from your skin cell, and we'd stick it inside of that egg. The second you did that, you just created a diploid egg, which is all you need for a human, right? Okay? Then if you embed that in the uterus, you get you. Literally you. Yeah. You'd have a twin. You'd have a twin that was like 16 years old younger than you. Exactly like you. However, if you fed them differently, remember nature, nurture, all that stuff. So, yeah. Well, here's a kind of a fun thing. They cloned a bull. These people fell in love with their bull, the pet cow. Okay, and that is not bull. It's for sure. I swear. I listened to this whole NPR interview on it one day. It was like an hour long. And so they paid this company to go through. It's called somatic cell nuclear transfer and create their pet bull because it was like such a loving pet. I guess it was friendly. They come out and pet it. It wasn't like a mean bull, except when they cloned it and they made a new one. The new one was an ornery son of a bull, right? And so that thing, and so they had to actually have it put down. And they were mad. They tried to sue the company because it wasn't. They said it wasn't the same, and they're like, you don't get it. There's a whole other set of circumstances, like how you feed it, right? If it develops more or less testosterone, the whole thing can change. Okay. Also, the cow you put it in might have a different set of transcription factors and telling it to make proteins in different orders and all that good stuff. And so it's not always just your DNA, right? Oh, there's a lot of situations. You can have your pet cloned. There's companies that do this. Like if you like your pet so much, you can pay them to clone your pet, and they'll do it. That's creepy, kind of. Yeah, right. Just go to get a free one. Cats show up all the time at my doorstep. I would not have. People have had their cats cloned, though. In America, no. So there are 4 different kingdoms that fall under the domains. The kingdom Protista, fungi, planta, and animalia. These, of course, are the different types of prokaryotes. Well, we understand what fungus are, the fungus among us, the shroom family. And then we know what plants are. We get that. They've got chloroplasts and cellulose and all that good stuff. And then we know what animals are. We're an animal. This one up at the top is the catch-all group. If you don't fit into fungi, plant, animal, you automatically go into Protista, which is basically single-celled eukaryotes. Okay? Some of them can actually collaborate and come into a multicellular structure as part of their cell cycle. I worked a whole summer on amoeba. It's called Dictyostelium, and they are a goofy organism. When they get starved of nutrients, they start to try to reproduce. So a whole pile of the population will commit suicide, and then the other ones come together and form a structure called the Mexican hat, and then they form a stalk. And I'm not kidding you. and then they'll actually self-fertilize with another one, and then they'll start their whole cycle again. It's weird, but that's how they do it. That's how they survive, and they only do that if they get starved. So it'd be like, okay, we only have 2 cheeseburgers. Some of us got to go, right? And so that's what they do automatically. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. I didn't make up the Mexican hat. That's what they call it. I promise. All right, so we look at our different domains. Of course, they branch off into different types of organisms. Here is our group. We understand those thoroughly. The 2 that are kind of a mystery are our extreme archaebacteria, and then, of course, the type of bacteria that we refer to as being bacteria today, and that does include our cyanobacteria, the photosynthesizing bacteria. Okay. So I'm going to put this chart up, and I'm going to give you guys something. I'm going to give you a 3-way Venn diagram. Oops, I gave you too many. A 3-way Venn diagram. I'm going to leave this image up on your screen because I know it's small. And I want you to include this in your notes. Sometimes when I have you make things like this, I allow you to use them later. I'm just saying. Just in case you want to make another one. Whenever I have single-sided copies of things like that, I usually just make them double-sided so I can use them later if I... Well, we'll use it again. So I'm going to freeze this. Oh, I got to leave that up, don't I? Sorry. And I'm going to stop the recording.